so glad you podcasted. It's I tell everyone, you don't have to make it public, keep it private, but I think everyone should have a YouTube channel. I think everyone should have a podcast. Like, it's just like, when do you get time to actually just talk? Like, you learn more. Like, I know more about poetry because I talk about poetry all the time.
Totally. Well, it was like a real sort of fact-finding mission for me in a way, because the podcast was called Sinister Myth, and it was interviewing people like some people in Columbus, and then also like experts that I've met or came across, thinking about how stories we tell can perpetuate violence. So it's sort of like thinking about how stereotypes or like certain kinds of assumptions can really just encourage violence in the world, whether we're talking about sex workers, or if we're talking about trans people, or if we're talking about stereotypes around race and things like that as well. So like, it was super rewarding because I just felt like I was learning so much from people who really knew a lot about it. And I would have kept doing that if I could, but again, lifetime. Yeah.
Like every
Yeah.
yes you say is like 1,000 no's, like it's.
But this is why I really appreciate what you're doing, because I know how time consuming it is to do something like this, and all the stuff we do. I know how time consuming that is. And so, it's very wonderful of you to do it.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
It's it's like when you're launching a rocket, like the most intensive part is the phase one.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of fuel, like a quarter of fuel, just send the first part of the fuel in the rocket up.
Yeah.
And so it is a lot of time now, but the goal is that for it to become somewhat sustainable and that can coast in the future, you have to.
It's wonderful because you're creating a community. And like, for example, that chapbook, Lycanthrope, the one on the top, I found out about that Clintonville Book Award thing through your group.
Oh, really?
And it got shortlisted for it, which was lovely.
Hey.
So that's basically because of you setting up that Instagram.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, it is. It's totally because of you. And I was happy about that because it just meant like people in Columbus were reading it, and that somebody liked it, which is always nice, isn't it?
It's funny because the last 3 interactions I've had, people have come up to me and talk about opportunities that they found from the things that I post, which is because the thing is that when you put stuff online, it's so parasocial heavy. Like you don't know.
Yeah, you put it out there, don't you? You think, is this gonna? It was the same with Women of Ohio when I was posting on different groups, so like Cleveland poetry groups, and I was like, is anybody gonna send anything?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You sort of worry, don't you?
Yeah.
But then it does come back, which is nice. Yeah.
And it's just
it makes a difference.
You're talking to the silent majority out there, and that's when you're making these things, you just have to understand that's part of it,
It is.
But eventually, like when you put out feelers,
people
you get
are
signals.
really happy. So
They are. Yeah.
That's lovely, isn't it? When you kind of. And that's something that's important. But I'm talking too much, and we're supposed to be.
No, we got this on tape. This is good.
Okay. Well, you can edit it up and make it like sound like it all flows.
It's gonna be good.
One thing that I really love is mentoring people, and I do a lot of mentoring work. So, some of it is through things like Women of Ohio and my teaching here, and then also over in the UK because I'm Welsh American.
Yeah.
And basically, I've still got really strong roots in Wales, and I do a lot of mentoring there with new writers, and I find it really rewarding. I love working with people, and one of the things that I feel people just need is somebody to give them that pep talk to say, you have to persevere. Like in this life, if you want to succeed,
or even just permission.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times when people ask for help, they're not really asking for help. They just want you to tell them do it.
Yeah.
Just that push.
Well, I'm thinking about this because one of my mentees, actually, I had a long talk with her on the phone recently, about maybe like a month and a half ago. And she was like, oh, I'm giving up. I've sent out this manuscript. I'm not sure if it's going to be published. I'm feeling quite wobbly about it. I said, you have to stick with it. You have to stick with it. You just have to stick with it. And basically, she's now getting a collection out with Broken Sleep, which is a really good publisher based in the UK. So I'm just so delighted for her. It's Jane Campbell, and her book is called Dykeland, and it's all about living in a women's commune, and the relationships between the women, the disagreements, like the love between them. It's a wonderful book, so I'm really excited about that. And I love working with people, encouraging them. I sort of want to be the person that I would have liked to have had as a young poet. And I did have good mentors. I have had good mentors, but I suppose I want to take on what they did for me and more as well.
Yeah.
No.
I think, as someone that's pushing business, with poetry and art, I think a lot when you think about business, people will ask, well, who's your target? Who's the person you're really trying to help? And very often it's a younger version of yourself,
Right.
Right. And I think with teaching, it's the same idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And with teaching as well, with teaching and with the writing business, I feel like we don't have to do it how it's been done in the past.
No,
which is
1000%. Thank you for saying that. Yes, exactly. You get it.
It doesn't have to be hyper competitive.
It doesn't be competitive at all.
No. It doesn't have to be about, kind of tearing down work or kind of shredding it and, in workshop or, some of the tendencies you sometimes see. But I feel like there's a different way of doing it, which is just about having respect for writers. I feel like sometimes when I've had stories from writers who have worked with editors and they said, oh, well, really, I kind of came out of it feeling like the writer just wanted me to write poems like them.
Yep.
And that's not what you want at all. I feel like it's much more that you want to enable that person within their, the personality of their poems, like what they want to do with their poems. It's not having empathy and kind of helping them to write the best possible poem for them rather than something you would write. And I think that is so important when working with editors, right?
Yeah. I think, one, that's the reason that the Iowa model has gotten so attacked in recent years.
Right.
Justifiably so.
Yeah.
And it's I can't tell you how many workshops I've been at where it starts and it just immediately goes into the poem, and it's we don't even know what the goal for the poem is. We don't know is it publication? We don't even know where it's trying to get published. We don't know who the audience. We don't know anything about what the poem's for. And so we're just going to dive into feedback and then be oh, wait a minute, they actually wrote this to be part of a collection for kids, or aiming for teenagers, or whatever the purpose is. And it's because if my audience is there and everyone's just giving me feedback, because everyone's just assuming oh, academia, but even that's general, right?
It's an assumption.
There's a lot of problems.
And this was really clarified for me by reading Felicia Rose Chavez's book, The Anti-Racist Writing Workshop. So I've always felt a bit like this about the workshop, but her book is wonderful because she creates a new model, which is about centering the actual writer who's bringing a poem to the workshop. And you come along with questions which you are concerned about. So say, I'm not sure about this title. I think this could be in a different form. Can you give me suggestions? And then the workshop focuses on that. And if you have another suggestion, this is what I really like, and I do in my own workshops, is you kind of say, I have a suggestion about turning this into a sonnet. Would you be interested? You ask. You don't come in and say, right, this poem could be a sonnet. And I'm going to tell you, they do this and that and, whatever else, without asking permission, when someone might not even be interested in that kind of traditional form. Maybe they're just, they feel like that's not something that they want to engage with, or that they want to do something much more subversive. And so just asking the question is really important because it centers the writer and what they want. And she writes in the book about taking poems into workshop and feeling like the response to them comes out of not understanding the context or what it's like to be heard. and that is actually really damaging for a writer to come in and for someone to be like, oh, I don't get this poem. And really that's kind of on the person in the workshop to work that out. It's not for the writer to be like, I've got to like explain my whole experience, how I experience microaggressions or whatever else, you know. That's not for them to have to, you know, explain that. And so I feel quite strongly about it. And I find when you use that model, the workshop changes and it becomes less about that kind of performance of what a great editor you are, you know, which is what a lot of people have anxiety going into workshop. They're like, if I don't come up with some good edits, people are going to think I'm not a very good writer. And it shouldn't really be about that. And I think if you take all that away, suddenly the workshop becomes such a lovely, warm space.
It's centered on the poet.
Yeah.
You know?
I love it. I love it.
We have a retreat, and Ruth Awad used to be one of our facilitators. Now it's she used that a lot in our workshops. We also, another step to that same workshop model is like, I forget what it's called. I think it's called the courtroom or something like that. So it's like, again, always based on the poet's approval. So it's like the poet has agency. Like the poet's getting workshop has control over the direction the discussion goes in. And what happens is you bring a poem, and then everyone has like index cards, and then on your index card you write your suggestion or your feedback or your question. And then you give all those cards to the poet, and the poet then decides what question to raise to the group or not. And then you see people's approval. It's like the courtroom aspect is exactly.
That's nice.
And then you raise it. So it's like, so if someone says, hey, I think the poem starts in stanza 2, not stanza 1.
Right.
All in favor, and then like everyone can then vote. So then you can see what the consensus is, and that's where the courtroom aspect is. And then you can, if the poet wants to allow a debate to happen, to hear people's reasons for it or against it. So that's another way. It also makes it a little bit safer for the people who are providing the feedback because it's anonymous, because you write on the index card, you give it to the poet, so no one knows who wrote it, including the poet who's asking for feedback. But just say, hey, someone wrote this. You guys agree or disagree, and something like that. But it all goes back to that idea of how can we give agency to the poet? How can we make sure that the discussion stays focused? We've all been in workshops, most likely if you've been to workshops, that have derailed.
And maybe you came away feeling just drained. Drained of enthusiasm or energy.
It's like we spent a half hour talking about this one word that I'm not even worried about.
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to talk about nothing else.
That's right. And you're like, oh,
we've all been there.
Why?